I guess just Kurt Jones. I mean, what kind of leap in scoring, different, floater ability has he taken this season?
He's taken a huge step. But towards the end of last year, he was playing arguably as one of the best guards in the conference. Probably the last half of conference play last year, going into the Big 12 tournament. So it's just something he kind of carried over from last year. He just did it a little bit more consistently this year, and it's probably showed up more because some of the games we really needed his scoring. And but then like last game, I thought he played a really good game where it wasn't forced by any means, but he still ends up with 24 points. And I think with Milan back, it definitely helps Kurt, so he's not as much of a focal point on the other team's scouting report. So it kind of frees him up a little bit to get open looks.
Late last year, was there a point you kind of saw him take that?
Yeah, we did. It started at the TCU game when Tamin was out, and that was early in conference play. But that was where we started to see that he could score at this level at a pretty high or pretty efficient clip. And then from there, it just kind of slowly kept building. And then once we hit the conference tournament and the ball was swinging around, he ended up being the recipient of a lot of those plays. But I think it was more just his confidence building. I think non-conference, he was trying to figure out, playing at this level and how he would impact the game. And then once we got into conference play, he started to figure out where his shots were coming from. And you could kind of see the switch flip for him that he knew he could do it at this level.
With Milan, we kind of noticed that, like everyone else, that the spacing's affected. Guys are getting, the ball pressure is a lot higher on the guards as they're trying to get into the lane. What are some maybe even more hidden things that affected the team with a guy with that length and that shooting ability from outside, and also ability to get in the paint and get the fadeaways off and all that? It just kind of affected the way the offense is able to operate.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things that was hidden in that whole stretch was it was good early, but then the more games went on, the more our other guys had to play. I think when you take out a guy who's averaging 25 to maybe 30 minutes a game, it just puts the load on the rest of those guys. And then as we started to see, you could tell we were getting a little bit more beat up as the games went on. So I think that was probably the one thing, that he benefits coming back, is just instead of playing 35 minutes a game for our starting guards, now they can play closer to 30, which I think over the course of the rest of the year, you'll see us being a little bit fresher in some of those games. But the other thing he does is he's just somebody that you have to account for. You can't basically say we're just going to run off these guys and just provide 4 or 5 guys in the paint, because he is capable of hitting 4 or 5, 6 threes in a game, and nobody wants to give him those looks. So it will open up some driving lanes for Keyshawn and Tamin, and it'll open up a little bit more for our bigs as well, with Joshua getting a chance to post up, because you can't just send guys to the basket.
It seemed like they were almost sending guys to the bigs, like they send them to Audie Crooks.
Yeah.
To come and rake at the basketball when they're trying to make a move, and how much does that affect their ability to go and get theirs?
Yeah, I mean, it's when you don't have necessarily a fear of getting burned from the outside, you can be way more aggressive defensively. And I think everyone got to see a little bit of that. It impacted our guards, it impacted our bigs. So I think, and specifically to your bigs question, I think it's going to put a lot more of a premium on deciding if you want to go and put 2 to the basketball and let Joshua or Deshaun or Grant pass it out. But for the last couple of games, they really haven't had to do that. There was really you didn't get hurt by it, so there was no negative to really sending 2 guys to the ball.
You're obviously in a little bit of a different role this year. How have you kind of adapted to your new responsibilities, or if there's any changes at all?
Yeah, I mean, there's slight changes, nothing too much. I mean, obviously the title is the biggest change, so from an outside perspective, people probably look at it different, but the way we've kind of been operating, it hasn't changed a whole lot. So really the role hasn't been too much different, but it's been fun. I mean, obviously our offense has had moments this year where it's been really good, so it's, you like to take credit for some of that, but at the same time, it's, you got to be willing to take these last couple games as well. So it's the role itself, working with Coach Schmidt in the offense, it's been very similar, hasn't changed a ton.
What has the process been for you and Coach Schmidt of kind of diagnosing the issues that you guys may have had previously offensively, and then finding ways to improve them this year with so much returning production?
Yeah, it's more just been a breakdown of what was good for us last year, kind of breaking down some of our best games and what was a result of that. And a lot of times you can look at it as just making shots or missing shots, but it was more what type of shots were we getting, and then how do we go about trying to get more of those. And the other thing we did was we felt with our depth we could be a little deeper, play a little faster. So we definitely tried to take advantage of transition, and it's been really good for us this year. I think it's kind of opened the game up. It's allowed us to score a few more points, get a few more possessions. So we kind of just evaluate it from that standpoint. But really, we haven't changed a ton from last year to this year. Some of the personnel pieces have been good. Joshua Jefferson gives us another piece that we didn't have in the last couple of years. So you can throw him the ball and get some decent looks out of it as well.
You mentioned not changing too much, or personnel being more of the difference. What do you think the value was, thinking back to Maui, when you guys started playing high-level opponents, of your offense still producing at a high level as kind of a validation of what you guys were changing, working against really good opponents?
Yeah, I think that was a huge validation, because when you're playing high possessions early in the year and some of the bye games we had, you kind of expect to be able to score, and then to be able to do it at that stage, playing back-to-back games, I think it definitely validates just the type of skill that we have on the offensive end, and the way that the whole team is constructed and put together. The balance we had from interior players to shooters to some of our guys getting downhill.
What's it been like having Deontay around?
It's been great. He's having a guy who's played in the NBA is obviously, he commands respect of our players. Like, it's very easy to get them to pay attention when he says something, because he's done it at the highest level. And then he's also played all over the country, or all over the world. So he has his knowledge is great. Like, he knows, like, when you play in EuroLeague, it's a different game than the NBA. So some of your reads have to happen quicker, and he's been able to kind of work with some of our guards and kind of tell them, what he's seen from the bench. And I think that because of who he is, they listen to him a little bit more than, say, if we brought in just a random graduate assistant or whatever his position is, director of something or another. But the point is, he's earned the respect that he gets from our players, and the way he carries himself, he's very easy to be around. So it's not, they look at it more of probably from a mentor standpoint than more of like a coach who's trying to get on him.
When you watched the film Saturday, what jumped out at you as what worked that hadn't been previously?
Just our ball movement, I think. We talk a lot about creating advantages, trying to get two guys to guard the basketball, and then making the right play. And for a stretch there, we would get two to guard the ball, sometimes three, but we weren't quite as willing to move the ball and make the right play. I thought we showed a lot of trust in each other, just spraying it around. And I do think Milan helps that, because it's easy to want to share the ball if he's out there, because he can, obviously make threes. So I think we just saw a little bit of that, but it was more just, I didn't feel like we forced a lot of drives into the paint. We just kind of let the game come to us and took what was there, and then as a result, the ball moves a lot quicker, and we get, in general, better looks.
TJ had talked about not falling in love with the middle ball screen, which seems like that is where the ball sticks, when you guys are stubborn about getting that. How were you guys able to avoid that Saturday? It never seemed to really materialize.
Yeah, we just, like I said, we put a lot of emphasis in the 2 days leading up to it of just making the simple play, not trying to make a hero play, not trying to overdo it. Like, obviously we want to get into the paint, and that's been good for our offense, but we also don't need to do it on the very first attempt. So we talk about getting multiple sides of the floor, talk about having multiple guys touch the basketball, and to our guys' credit, they did a good job of that.
Was it seamless having Milan back, or is there still some calibration that's going to have to happen here over the next?
It felt pretty seamless. He did look good. He looked fresh. The way he moved around looked like, he had some juice to him, and it was good to see that. And then I do think he brings us a little bit of confidence to our team in general, because he's got the ability to score multiple different ways, but he also draws the defense to have to guard him, so it opens up some avenues for guys to drive it. And I think everyone was pretty pleased having him back up the field.
How much of the 15 turnovers is a product of a good thing, the added ball movement? Maybe you guys want to make an extra pass, and it turns into something that you don't want, just because they're more open.
Yeah,
I mean?
for sure. I do think that was a big part of it, and the turnovers to me weren't forced turnovers from the standpoint of, like, you over dribble into a gap and you get the ball knocked out of your hands. They were we had a couple trying to advance it up the floor, and yeah, could we have held on to it? Probably, but I don't mind those ones. We had a couple where we tried to hit our big rolling, and those are plays we hadn't really had in the past 4 or 5 games. So like from an offense standpoint, we'll take that every time, as long as they're plays that are what I would consider trying to continue to create advantages. I think that's you work on cleaning it up out here on the court, but at least the mentality was there to give it a look. So those ones aren't as bad as stepping out of bounds or just running over somebody because we don't necessarily know what we're doing at the time. So we can live with those turnovers. We'll still try to clean them up, but I wasn't as upset about those ones.
What have you seen from UCF since they were on the right side of the bubble certainly before you guys kind of put it on, and then they've kind of struggled since, but they've got length, athleticism, all the things that can bother you on the road for sure.
Yeah, I mean they're a scary team. Just as easily as they can lose, they can win by 20. I mean they have the ability to put up points, probably as good as any team in our conference. And I think what they've seen is just what the league does. It is a tough league to get through. Obviously, with us dropping 3 games, I think they've dropped maybe 4. Yeah. I think that's more par for the course. I mean, when you go on the road to some of these environments, it's tough to play, and I think that's what they're facing. And let's face it, like early February is probably the toughest stretch for all teams because you got multiple games where the scouting report's out on you, and everyone kind of does the same thing once you're in conference. And if it's working for that time, it's hard to turn it around, and I think that's where they're at. But from the standpoint of if they're dangerous, they're easily one of the more dangerous teams in the league, and their center's starting to really play well. Their guards have ability to put up points, and then the press at home, that can be a big impact for them.
You mentioned a lot here about creating advantages, drawing 2, maybe 3 defenders to the ball. As you think about maybe your offensive improvements this year, how much was that emphasized in the offseason of just kind of getting to the basic idea of creating a numbers advantage in basketball?
That was pretty much all we did all offseason. I mean, it's every drill we do. We have the luxury of having a bunch of managers, so any type we're doing skill work, they're facing those same situations pretty much since the end of the season last year, going all the way through the summer. So it's been a huge part of what we talk about. Like, it's part of our core philosophy offensively is just to try to get 2 guys to guard the ball and create the advantage, and then just continue to play from there. So it's been a major emphasis, probably since we got back to work after the season was over last year.
Does Deontay have any influence on that, playing in the NBA, playing professionally for so long, where like the ball screen, pick and roll action became such a big thing in the NBA like 15 years ago, right?
Yeah, I think he will. Kind of when he joined us, it's kind of hard to do anything at that point in the season. So I think this offseason he'll have a huge impact in terms of teaching the guards just some of the nuanced stuff of how to get to guard the ball. It's easy to talk about it, but it's harder to do it. And I think he'll be able to put his imprint on that this offseason.
It seemed like UCF went against the scouting report the other teams went with when they played you guys. Are you anticipating more of the same, or that they might try to do something different? And I know now with Nealon back, the personnel kind of scrambles a little bit.
Yeah, I think it'll probably be a similar game plan for them. Like, there's certain teams that try to do what other teams have done, and there's other teams that more or less stick to kind of what their core is. I think they're probably more of a core team. They're going to press, they're going to play some zone, they're going to do some of the stuff they do, and then like defensively, I think they'll stick more to what they've been doing, playing some drop coverage, playing some switch 5. So I don't anticipate wholesale changes for what they're trying to do. Honestly, giving up 108, you would say we probably need to do something different, but I still think that they'll stick more towards what their core is, trying to pressure, trying to force turnovers. I don't see it being more of the alternative.
TJ talked a lot, I don't want to say last offseason, maybe 2 offseasons ago, about your work with Tamin on his shot, kind of going back to the basics and rebuilding it. In retrospect, how rewarding was that? And also, how difficult is that for a guy who didn't shoot it great as a freshman, but still did so many winning things to go back and humble himself and be like, all right, whatever you need me to do to break down and bring back up, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I think it was extremely rewarding. But the thing is, from my position, it was easy because he was at a place where he wanted to make the improvement. I think the hardest thing when you're working with shots is with guys who feel like their shot's okay, and aren't really willing to go back and really look at the details of it. And Tamin was willing to completely do whatever we said, and to his credit, he worked extremely hard at it and made the changes that we had talked about, which wasn't a ton of changes, but he had also had success shooting the ball in high school. And so we talked a lot about what the difference was from when he made some shots in high school versus his freshman year. And some of it was just a mentality change too. It was just trying to get him to understand that we need him to shoot those shots, and he's such a winner, he'll do whatever it takes to win. And then, so I think part of it was saying, we need you to be able to shoot the shots, that teams can't play defense by not guarding you. And I think that was a big part of it, but a lot of the credit goes to his efforts. And I mean, he was in the gym all the time working at it. And, you know, I think we had a little bit of a hiccup this year with the shoulder. You know, it hasn't quite been, you know, as good, but I think in conference play he's starting to make over one a game, and he's kind of getting back to hunting those threes that he was turning down earlier in the year.
All it took was a broken thumb.
It was, you know, surprisingly, I do think it's helped his shot for whatever reason. And, you know, a lot of times when you have an injury, you start to focus on, you know, other little details. So like if you can't shoot it the way you've been, you have to really concentrate. And I think just that little extra amount of concentration, I do think has helped his shot. So I don't think it was the thumb itself, but I do think he had to focus on making sure a little bit more concentration on how to get the ball out of his hand, and you know, it's worked out.
Thanks, Coach.